Happy New Year if you're watching this in January, and if you're not watching this in January, happy whenever. I'm going to show you in this video the causes of slow and unclear tonguing on the flute. So if your tonguing sounds a bit sluggish, I'm going to explain why. The cause can be your actual tongue, and there's often clues from the way your embouchure looks from the outside that can tell you what your tongue's doing on the inside incorrectly, and we can fix that. But there's actually 3 other reasons that your tonguing on the flute can be slow and unclear, which I will tell you in a sec. My name is Jane Kavanagh, and I started my flute school online because I love showing people the small changes that you can make to your playing that make a big difference. Understanding these small little changes make the world of difference to how good you sound. So firstly, your actual tongue can be the reason that your tonguing sounds sluggish, slow, unclear, fluffy, which makes sense, right? That's probably what you thought it was going to be, but you might not know all the details. So firstly, when you tongue, it should be the tip of your tongue, the very tip of your tongue, touching up behind your top teeth near the ridge. So if you feel with your finger or tongue, it's like a ridge behind your top teeth. The tip of your tongue should be touching near that ridge, near the back of your top teeth. There's a really, really easy way to get this position right, and it's to say this. T, 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 or ta, ta, ta. Feel where the tip of your tongue is touching. That's a perfect little, what's it called? Alliteration. The tip of your tongue is touching, T, 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 exactly where it needs to touch when you play the flute. So if you're using the wrong part of your tongue, instead of the tip, you're using, for example, the flat part of your tonguing's not going to be very clear, and it will sound like this. I'm going to use ta, 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 like that. Ta 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 is not as clear as ta ta ta. You can have the wrong shaped tongue. For example, it can be curled like this when you're tonguing. And the clue for that is that when you look at yourself in the mirror, your embouchure is going to be round, like that, too round. That's how you can see that someone has a curled tongue. If someone has a really round embouchure, I'm like, their tongue's doing something a bit weird. So you can see without actually having x-ray vision into your mouth, which is quite handy. Another wrong shape of your tongue is when it's curled back, like ta, 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 and it sounds... You might think that sounds clear, but as soon as you start going fast in your tonguing, it's going to become very difficult. Also up high, that's not going to work. And the reason for that, if you have room in your mouth to curl your tongue back, it means that your embouchure is too open, the hole is too big, and you're losing air. That's why high notes won't work, because you'll run out of air because the hole's too big. And the last way your actual tongue can make your tonguing unclear is if you're doing the wrong movement with your tongue. So the best way to work out if you're doing the wrong movement is to take your tonguing that you do on the flute, but take the flute away and say it. And if you end up saying something like this, tss, 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 or and there's a bit of a whistle in there if you can't hear it, then you know you've got the wrong tongue position. So if we go tss, tss, tss on the flute, you'll actually hear that. And there's a really big delay. If you're whistly, you'll start to hear the whistle, and you guessed it, your embouchure is going to be too round as well, losing too much air. And obviously your sound is not going to be very clear because your embouchure is not right. Did you notice the common thread through all of those things that I said just then? If you have a good shaped embouchure, it means that your tongue is more likely to be doing the right thing, and a good shaped embouchure will obviously get you a really good sound as well. Okay, the 3 other things that affect your tonguing clarity: airspeed, syncing, S-Y-N-C, I'll tell you in a sec about that, and tension. Okay, let's go through these 3 things. Airspeed. Too slow a speed of air is going to make your tongue have to work really hard because it feels heavy and sluggish, and it will be unclear and slow. 2 ways that your airspeed can be too slow. One is if the hole in your mouth is too big and it means that too much air is coming out, the air is moving too slowly, and like I said, your tongue has to work and ends up being really heavy and slow and sluggish. So that's one thing, the hole in your mouth is too big. The other thing is if you've got your embouchure right, the hole is small enough, you're getting a really good sound, but you're still finding that your tonguing is not clear and slow. It can be because you're slowing the air down between notes. Okay, I've got a really good example on this one. If I say a sentence like this, I have consistent air when I'm speaking. But if I say a sentence like this, you'll hear that between the words, there's a drop off in the speed of the air. If you do the same thing when you're playing the flute, you're going to have a not very smooth effect when you play, but it's going to affect your tonguing too. So let's do the one where my air continues through, which is good. And now let's do that if I slow down the air between each note. It kind of sounds like it's my tonguing that's the trouble, but it's not the tonguing, it's the air. Oh, hello. We have a visitor. That's a cockatoo. Okay, I don't always talk to birds, just sometimes. The next thing that can make your tongue sound unclear and slow is when your tongue and your fingers are out of sync. For example, this is out of sync. Okay, so that sounded pretty terrible. I could have made it worse. Let me see if I can get it even worse. Oh, perfect. That was worse. Good. So the trouble there is not that your tongue is too slow. It's that your fingers are uneven or your tongue is uneven. And then put them together and it sounds totally out of whack. It's a really easy fix because you either just need to take away your tonguing and do it slurred, or take away the fingers and do it tongued, like this. Get those two even and you'll end up with, and it's much more in sync. All right, and the last thing that can really affect the speed of your tonguing is tension. If you have a tight tongue, it's obviously going to work really hard and have trouble moving lightly and quickly. But it's never your tongue that is the problem. You are never going to have an isolated, tight tongue. It's just not possible. The tension is always coming from somewhere else. Like you're never going to have an isolated, say, tight ring finger. It's never just going to be one finger. The tension's always going to be coming from somewhere else. It's like your hand, your arm, your shoulder, something. It's the same with tongue. The tension's going to be coming from somewhere else. For example, your face, your neck, your shoulders, your jaw, it's all interconnected, and the tongue can suffer by being too tight and not being able to move too freely. One of the clues of this is if you see tension in other parts of your body. Like if you have a really tight embouchure like this, it's very difficult to have a really tight embouchure and a beautifully relaxed tongue that can move freely. There's going to be a flow-on effect. The good news about that is that that is easy to fix as well. You work out where it's tight, you start relaxing that, and it flows through to other parts of your body, like your tongue, and frees it up to move more quickly. So there you go. You just learned 4 different reasons and lots of examples of each one about why your tongue can move slowly or be unclear. If you like what you saw in this video and you want to learn more, then you might be interested in joining the Flute Academy. This is a paid program and you can find out at www.flute.school/academy more about this program, what you'll learn and if it's right for you. I've just opened enrollments to the Flute Academy for 2020. There's limited places, and if you're interested in fixing your flute playing, come and see what you'll learn, www.flute.school/academy. Doors are only open for a week. Hopefully see you there, and good luck with your flute playing.